While I only know that Andrew Tate is an extreme misogynist, I've never seen any of his videos, so I can't comment on him. But as for any serious life-destroying abuse of women, my goodness. I have been on the receiving end of the evils of Western family courts, in my case the UK's, as my luck would have it twice, and believe me, I felt like I've been repeatedly tied to a tree and serially gang raped for years, with similar metaphorical violation being done to my children, especially my oldest when he was very young, just turned 2 and onwards. Yet I have not been able to free myself and rescuers. I was severely abused in my marriage and found out soon after our church wedding that my husband, who had been amazing while we dated, had premeditatedly planned to keep his many long and short-term secret lovers and add some more through Lonely Heart Edwards forever. I had never consented to any of that degeneracy in any way, physically, emotionally, sexually, so it was a form of human trafficking. Now, I was also pregnant by what I now perceive as a type of sexual assault, as had I known that my husband would never be faithful, I would have never come near him, let alone slept with him or married him to start a family. My daily crying hugely affected our baby and my already damaged sinuses with permanent effect. My abuser deprived me of sufficient rest, sleep, forced me to eat foods that exacerbated my extreme sickness, to go to the gym with high temperature, and ordered me to accept his womanizing, never file for a divorce, as women had to do what they were told to do, or I'll take the baby you are carrying away from you, as everyone is on sale, implying bribing family courts. He went out every single night when not traveling with his lovers on business trips, and I was virtually a single mother to our baby, who had almost died at birth due to the sadistic abuse of me. My abuser refused to be intimate with me ever again as mistresses for sex, and the almost daily barrage of "I've slept with over 200 women and you are by far the worst of all of them" followed. Yes, our intimacy before the wedding and him showing me his true colors is, in my opinion, a sexual assault. Before the marriage trap and human trafficking into a role I had never consented to. Yet such premeditated marriage of use as entrapment is even trendy today and normalized and encouraged both by cunning, ruthless men and women of the same caliber who know that courts protect them. Once, supported by 2 GPs and even my lovely in-laws, I dared to file for divorce. My abuser filed for child custody of our son, who had just turned 2, and got it hands down, amid 100+ pieces of perjury perpetrated by him, 2 judges, one of whom is a senior criminal court judge who apparently had never worked in our court, and later no one even knew what he was doing there. The Kafka's officer, staging lies by my own solicitor, before a man and a woman were sent in to practically order me to sign off the divorce settlement and private pension I was legally entitled to, implying, threateningly, that if I did not oblige, I may not see my severely depressed baby dumped on strangers again. They threw me out on the dole, childless and penniless, so there was social security embezzlement within the suspected corruption, while my abuser laughed his head off with, "This is how intelligent men get divorced." More than 21 years on, I'm still not allowed by many judges and politicians to know the names of the men and women who stole my money and livelihood, my dreams and plans, my health and my career, who have abused my children with their corrupt banditry, and even to know if they are legal professionals at all, or some suspected racketeering thugs within family courts. What more, my solicitor and the man, whoever he was, lied they had met to discuss my case at a meeting that I was supposed to attend, but they never had. yet still fraudulently charged the legal aid thousands. I then procured evidence for the Kafka's officer's fabricated report on my child, letters from the police and the social services, now seen by dozens of thousands globally, just for the Kafka's manageress in my town to tell me and other moms the officer had fabricated reports about, we believe for bribe, that she is now retired, so cannot be prosecuted. And our children were left with the abusers and us on the brink of life. I was shocked to find out that mine was one of millions of such cases of extreme domestic abuse across the Western world. The EU, Switzerland, USA, UK, Australia, New Zealand and Canada, seemingly secretly orchestrated in a cavalier, impromptu way by some big egos in wigs and robes who enjoy playing God, but have only darkness perforated by their skyscraper egos as their prevailing attributes. Despite being illuminated by many campaigning professionals that mainly serious male abusers applied for full custody of young children, weaponizing them to perpetuate the abuse of their victims, the moms, and make them pay them, or rather their various child carers, mainly mistresses and other lovers, child maintenance, supreme legal and political grandees, male and female, have willfully looked away and sent swathes of abused women and children into total destruction and even death. In many cases, there is battery with hospital records to prove it, paternal negligence, womanizing and marital promiscuity from the start, basically sociopathy, where the family-loving victims with values and utmost probity are punished further with the loss of their children and often prohibition of all contact with them, so that the father's mistresses, female homewreckers who, alongside the male abusers, joyfully abuse fellow women in the most gruesome ways, can take over the mothering. Basically, devoted, sacrificing mothers, though I know cases of devoted fathers, also victims of sociopathic, ruthless women being treated the same, especially foreign ones married to native women, well, like us abuse moms too, but not exclusively, whatsoever, are thrown out on the street, childless and penniless, like pieces of rotten potatoes, so that ultra-misogynistic, sadistic, violent, negligent abusers of all sorts are left unscathed in the aftermath of their nefarious conduct. According to my 21-year research within my campaigning, all the whistleblowers are sacked. There are no genuine complaints procedures against any legal departments, and all the victims and the media are strictly gagged. Even the BBC, whose duty is to inform the public of any serious dangers lurking beneath their feet, yet they allow the elite vipers to dig abysmal craters of injustice and destruction on the sly, so that as many unsuspecting victims as possible fall into them, in the belief of many, in order to both milk them for money and impose their deviant lifestyle on the whole society as normal. And this has been apparently going on for over 60 years, with life-shattering violation of family-orientated, monoamorous parents, many of whom are women. Yet almost all the feminist organizations and celebrity feminists, including Western first ladies of yesteryears and today, have been expediently silent about it. As I fought on to expose these horrific human rights abuses and child abuses alongside thousands of others, President of the Family Division at the Royal Courts of Justice in London personally saw me 18 years ago to threaten me with banning all contact with my, many would say, sold, severely distressed baby, now left to live with strangers like an orphan, after dropping from 55 to 21% in weight due to the court abuse, if I did not shut up. For many years, I could hardly walk with grief, and the images of my crying young child clinging onto me not to be sent back to strangers will haunt and tarnish my health forever. Not to mention the infamous case of that wealthy British doctor from a globally powerful family who will probably see this post as he's created a hobby of destroying lives and then scrutinizing the impeccable working of his elite connections, many believe top judges, who apparently silence his victims, including his own many children, and keep them away from ever getting him accountable and obtaining justice that they are legally, on paper, entitled to. He has been, as for my understanding and perception, while masquerading as a known sperm donor, collecting a huge number of women and making dozens of children with them, while also, in scattered tandems, having many affairs with married and engaged women, enjoying stabbing their men in the backs in order to play his own sick board game, using them all as disposable pawns. As for my traumatized discernment, fortified by the shocking protection of the man by the British most powerful, he has been snobbishly, and many believe as part of some megalomaniac Genghis Khan quest for ruling in a way the world, given his sublime connections in the world's top institutions that affect the lives of us all, inviting the posh among his likely 60-plus children, though that is a hypothesis given that courts let him hide that vital genetic fact from his victims, into his powerful family, and throwing the peasants among them into his bin of worthlessness. He has been fanatically lying to the latter, even about his heritage, name, or family status, lying for 10-15 years that he's never met any of the children, while handpicking their superior quality siblings for love and bonding, his own words, and fanatically rejecting the peasants, while seemingly recoiling from their lack of fine panache, notable intellect, and hefty familial dole. Oh, but also, it is not that easy for the posh accepted by him mums either, as apparently possibly all the mothers are indiscriminately blackmailed with having to sleep with him in exchange for his each visit, and his accepting their children in any way, even only for one day ever, and in exchange for any sibling introduction. Or they will be, alongside their weaponized children, confined to the harem chambers of rejection and unbearable psychological and emotional abuse of child discrimination in relation to their siblings by more obsequious mothers, child rejection, and the enormous leaden cloud of not knowing anything about their prodigious and hive-style genetic pool, identity and roots, which is mental abuse like no other. Yet the judges and politicians, whose job is to protect and not harm children, endorse, and all the child protection charities and organizations look away from. Not to mention that the blackmail of taking part in child maintenance services frauds, organized, I believe, possibly internally, is also never far away from the sexual blackmail in exchange for him treating your children in a humane manner. The doctor, who has usurped the sperm donation arena for sinister ulterior motives of, many believe, including me, a sexual kink of polyamory, may have been apparently pretending to have romantic interest in many of his baby mamas while hiding the main partner and their children together and scores of auxiliary ones from them. So, not all the mothers, whatever their class, have agreed to his sordid supine jiggy-wiggies, meaning that those who do not consent and are tricked into the rotational encounters are victims too, yet almost certainly not allowed to find him accountable for anything. He takes part in frauds with child maintenance services that deprive many of his children whose mothers he's abused of the funds they are entitled to. Apparently, almost certainly, the frauds orchestrated by a top child maintenance services person likely connected to the elites that the doctor comes from, as only they seemingly get the top public sector fat cat positions for the eye-watering sums of money, and the elites seem to know each other and look after each other so well. Well, this is a conjecture. Now, is she also paid by him, in terms of bribe, to arrange the fraud, Or is it just a scratch my back and I'll scratch yours? The modus operandi of the elites that are anything but. The fact that the very institution that is meant to put children first deprives them of their due money does not seem to bother the corrupt chief protagonists of this filth, as they do not seem to regard the destruction of ordinary people, even children, even their own children, as anything worth losing their sleep over, as long as their pockets are full. Even a Department of Work and Pensions minister has said it is their right to take part in the fraud. Sod the children. I said that. The doctor is also suspected of using British fertility clinics for many years after being blocked from them for exceeding the 10 family per donor limit, as large loopholes have been left in the gamete sale so that they are efficiently milked for the maximum profit, again, possibly by the elite doctors from the elite families in charge of the highly ethical business, again, if so at all, with children being victimized, as well as their unsuspecting parents using those clinics. Not to mention that the doctor has been accused of rape, not proven, never charged, and that he's executive of a top world humanitarian agency, a brother who preaches safe sex, ironically, to Africa, has apparently gagged the media about something to do with his brother's child spraying, but that he does not want the public to know, and he blocks his peasant nephews and nieces. Now, has the same humanitarian uncle who hugs poor rural African children in pictures chronicling his Messiah heart, being secretly, possibly alongside his wife, also a prominent global humanitarian, and their children, welcoming their Haruna relatives' posh children into their high-powered family, while collectively keeping ultra quiet about it so that the peasant cousins never find out. We are also not allowed to know that vital public interest fact either. Now, apparently, no lawyer dares to take on any case against the doctor due to his elite connections, and the media have apparently been gagged by the judges despite the abuse of women and children, and some men, husbands of some of the lovers, on an unprecedented scale. For 15 years or so, some mothers have been trying to expose the doctor, sue him, and allow the played-with women to learn what he's been doing with them and their children, but no lawyer dares to come close to the case. Remember that not all the mothers agreed to playing partners and children with him, while he's been possibly doing the same with tens of other mothers and their children. Only a few has also been lying to many, maybe even all of them. Yet he's been producing children like an out-of-control seeding combine for about 25 years now, refusing to allow the siblings to know about each other and meet, like he'd promised when negotiating the arrangements, which is abuse and reproductive coercive control over those mothers too. He treats women like voiceless, inanimate incubators, yet courts and parliaments seem to be compliant. The mothers who try to sue him pro se get their court filings literally lost, court forms tampered with, and apparently all that they suspect is likely being sabotaged by some very top judges who are both top judges in Britain and in some Caribbean tax haven where both the doctor and them now live, on one small island together, likely, it's a hypothesis of course, plotting together, many believe, the psychological carnage of the doctor's victims, including his discarded children, who his brother and himself, and obviously, according to many who know about the case, many elite henchmen, judges, who abet their cruelty, deem worthless. Now, courts simply ignore the victims completely, despite tons of evidence for serious blackmail, demand for the recruitment of women for the doctor to impregnate, child maintenance services frauds, suspected fertility clinic monetary machinations that the government seemingly deliberately refused to legislate, the 15-year psychological abuse of some of the children, and tons more, like all evidence against the doctor being ripped up at child maintenance services, and the names of all those taking part in the frauds erased as soon as the first victim mom reported a fraud about 15 years ago. If the suspicion about the top judges abusing their power to deprive the victims of their basic human rights and protect the right to extreme promiscuity of their class, regardless of whose lives are bulldozed, is correct, it is at variance with the entire concept of democracy and a bona fide judiciary. It is also utterly derisory and re-abusing towards the mental health of abused, now distressed, helpless and vulnerable women, victims of extreme psychological and other abuses, something that flies in the face of the entire women protection matrix currently enveloping the public discourse. Although mental health and human rights of any innocent human being, regardless of their gender or any other demographic, are equally pivotal. It is something that those who lack basic human decency and the barometer of right versus wrong do not intrinsically possess, especially if they can earn money by inflicting pain, or have to cover up the malign deeds of their powerful mates, like some judges are rumored to. So, while copious abuses of women are being brought to justice by courts and judges in most Western countries, a question that is on the lips of many arises. When are family court judges, even the very top ones, and other court staff orchestrating the protection of criminals who shatter lives, including those of women and children going to face prosecution for the horrific human rights abuses, in the pillars of the society, the courts themselves? Child abuse, theft of livelihoods, ripping babies away from their devoted, sacrificing mothers, encouragement of perjury on an industrial scale, both by abusers and court staff, both male and female staff, all of whom are allowed to lie under oath as they please and freely to abuse anyone they like with total impunity. And many believe for bribe. The torture of battered mothers, some of whom have medical records that confirm the regular beatings, yet who still lose custody of their young children to their batterers. The minimization of the pernicious gravity, the egregious act of marrying someone while hiding lovers in the background, then blackmailing them with the loss of their babies that they are now carrying if they do not engage in group sex or turn a blind eye to the blackmailing spouse's promiscuity, and judges rewarding such conduct of abuse, or rather human trafficking, with child custody and most, if not all, of the matrimonial money granted to the abusers due to rumored corruption and child custody sale, to the abusers who, more often than not, dump those distraught children on others, commonly mistresses, to bring them up, scarring them for life. The xenophobia, racism, breach of all international and national laws, deprivation of the victims of genuine complaints procedures, the sacking of all the whistleblowers, the gagging of the media, who also seem to be led by the elite henchmen, relatives and friends from the upper echelons of the society and educational tiers. The elites in the name only, and thousands of consequent suicides in UK alone, and believed dozens of thousands of suicides across the Western world over the last 60 plus years, even their bereft families are gagged, are not something that decent human beings in positions of influence should ever shy away from exposing and stopping. We must also bear in mind that family courts have often been supervised by apex female judges who do not mind appeasing the most misogynistic of their behind-the-scene bosses, who practically own the world and seemingly, according to some victims, happily expedite their neoliberal worldwide agenda. And that some of us tortured mothers and children have had all-female legal staff on our cases, with jealousy, bitchiness, fabricated reports and even parts of judgments, and sadistic joy at the destruction of another woman's life, often due to jealousy of a potential divorce settlement like in my case, and in others due to the mother's stunning looks or prominent careers. In my own case, The Kafka's officer was a woman, yet tortured my baby and me with overt xenophobia and monetary bitterness, almost to death. Then, having taken my baby away from me to be dumped on strangers, I believe for £5,000 from my abuser, I know why I'm saying this, with a fabricated report, followed my shaking frame on the verge of life around the court and sadistically laughed her head off in the court waiting room and then the courtroom itself before the judge was due in, knowing that there was no accountability or CCTV, as I later found out. And consequently, and thanks to his senior criminal court mate who staged the case for him by planting untruths in his preliminary judgment for him, fabricated that I had admitted something in the witness box before him that I never had, to everyone's shock. The main judge, whose signature signed off almost all of my life, now carries all our extreme distress, pain, and life destruction on his conscience, and as the biggest part of his true career achievement. And instead of legally steamrolling his colleagues for their warped malfeasance, those two who stole my divorce settlement and pension and embezzled the Social Security for pushing us into penury, distress, and ruination of all our plans for rebuilding our lives, almost certainly due to corruption, and my abuser for the contempt of court with a huge pile of total and absolute fiction under my name, defamation, for perverting the course of justice by playing with the police and the social services, not to mention forging my signature when I later presented him with evidence for all this. He proceeded to threaten me, silence me, and alongside the family division president himself, leave my orphaned baby to go from hand to hand while the father worked, then lived abroad, and me on the verge of life and hardly able to breathe, sometimes even today. And mine is a tiny drop in the ocean of similar, clandestinely globally orchestrated cases against family-orientated parents, both mothers and fathers, but now especially abused mothers, around the entire Western world, where unaccountable family-hating judges collude, yet deliberately do not allow the public to learn about their trendy agendas, so that as many people fall prey to their controlling sadism and love of power, whose potency often reflects high level of human rights abuses and dearth of all decency and scruple. So while Andrew Tate, and I believe his brother, and many other suspected abusers of women face courts and justice for their malevolent deeds, who will be judging the judges and top politicians placing them on their legal thrones of godlike power, many say possibly in exchange for lucrative elite connections, private business contracts, and doors open to lottery win amount of wealth one day, something that the cushioned riches of most former top politicians seem to attest to, while women like me have been silenced and ignored both by neo-feminists and the very institution, the pillars of the society, regarding the life-annihilating abuse of our children and us, the abuse I liken to serial gang rape while being firmly tied to a tree. We are black, white, Asian, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, rich and poor, and our lives also matter, not just the elites. While any form of non-consensual sexual encounters are beyond wrong, extreme life-destroying abuses of other kind, physical violence, psychological and emotional and financial abuse, as well as sexual assaults by secret, premeditated, unconsented to connubial adultery, and hence life destruction of both the spouses and the children involved, and deprivation of the right to religion and own family values, must not be ignored, and trends of abuse cherry-picked to be congruent with the current narrative of the loudest. Bodily autonomy in regards to sex, marriage, and the right to informed, life-changing decisions are sacrosanct and should not be exclusive to the standard act of rape only, but they come in other salient shapes and forms that on paper covered by national and international laws that are habitually breached in court themselves. No abuse of an imperfect but devoted, family-loving, sacrificing mother will ever come close to the abuse of her children in the most extreme, life-altering ways of the aforementioned abuses. Yet that torture of women, both by the elite men and women perpetrating these crimes, and those of influence staunchly queuing to be co-opted by them, is still comprehensively bypassed. Suspected corruption within the legal arena that facilitates these forms of abuses is a serious crime itself. Yet those who are thought to be engaging in it, for whatever reason, both men and women, do so with impunity just because they come from the clique that has gotten hold of the power over the world and will not let go of any of it, regardless of the cost, even for themselves, as many of us believe God, the real one, cannot be fooled. Tragic are such hypocritical lives indeed.